In Christchurch, there was a pre-season challenge game between the New Zealand Warriors and the West Tigers. And I will dive deeper into the young players in a jiffy, because I found this game fascinating because the climax of the game was aligned with my interests. So the game got more interesting. It was a close affair in the last 10 to 15 minutes, and that's when the Warriors and the Tigers really went deep into their depth, rolling out all the young players. And for pre-season trials, I couldn't give a shit what was happening, apart from the young players. I'm seeing a lot of takeaways from pre-season footy, and when you consider that some NRL players are playing against SG Ball players, some New South Wales Cup players are playing against NRL players, taking the takeaways from preseason trials games just seems insane. And I'm not here to say Roger Tuivasa-Sheck sucks, because obviously he doesn't, right? Like, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck's really good. He's pretty damn impressive. But I've got not a unique perspective. I think I've got a very specific perspective with the Kiwi-NRL goggles on. So when I'm watching the Tigers, I'm looking out for Sione Latoa Vaihu. A couple of these lads, they add a name, they take a name away. So Warriors have Eri Iramia Toiava, who I've usually referred to as Eri Iramia. Sione Vaihu, his official title now is Senior Sione Latoa Vaihu. So I was watching out for him. I think he was number 28. I was like, this dude, he's probably the best Kiwi-NRL prospect in the Tigers system. He's a Waitemata junior from Auckland. Shout out Chris Viaila, who is also a Waitemata junior. He was playing centre for the Sharks against his former team, the Knights. He also looked powerful, robust, and eager. So watch out for him with the Sharkies. So I'm okay. I'm watching the Warriors, but I'm also watching an eye out for Latoa Vaihu. But then I see number 28, which is like when you consider there are NRL top 30s. And both teams, every NRL trial team, you're dealing with number 26, number 27, number 28, 29. Right? This is well down in the depth chart. And I'm watching number 28, Latoa Vaihu. He's on the field pretty early. And he's having a tough time against Tuivasa-Sheck. I think what happened is Latoa Vaihu went to right centre. This is all off the top of my head, so excuse me if I get this wrong. But he either played right edge or right centre when Declan Casey, I think, got knocked out by Zion Mai'uu. Unfortunate incident. More on that in a jiffy. But Latoa Vaihu he's trying to play New South Wales Cup. And he's marking Tuivasa-Sheck. So this sums up the whole trial thing. It's like, whoa, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, he's amazing. He was playing against the guy who's trying to crack into New South Wales Cup, right? You know, like, these are the trial matchups that are really the veil of illusion, I think, is quite profound here. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, there's no illusions about his ability. He's fantastic. But he's also marking up against the lad who is a few levels below him in the NRL pedigree chart. So big up Latoa Vaihu. I thought he was actually quite good for the Tigers, playing a bit of edge, maybe a bit of centre. He could even play middle forward. But unfortunately for him, he spent most of his minutes marking up against Tuivasa-Sheck. So take it both ways. Good for Latoa Vaihu, good for Tuivasa-Sheck, but also this is trials footy summed up in a nutshell. Speaking of the red card to Zion Mai'uu, like, that was unfortunate, and you don't want to be tackling like that. That's a recipe to get you off the field, and hopefully old mate from the Tigers, Casey's all good. All that good, warm and fuzzy stuff. Taking all that warm and fuzzy stuff into account, I actually love the red card. because I think it sums up Zion Mai'u. I don't think Zion Mai'u is a reckless player, but he is a high-energy, vigorous forward. And this is why, what do I always say about Zion Mai'u?
Imminent cult hero.
Imminent cult hero. As soon as he runs it straight at Mount Smart in an NRL game, he will be a cult hero. He will be a fan favorite. Smashing a bloke in the head isn't part of that at all. Let me get that clear. But it was a small glimpse at the vigor with which Mai'u and the New Zealand Warriors youngsters play with. Because every time Ali Leotawa runs the ball, he's moving forward. And anytime anyone goes near him, he's doing the Rocco Berry wrap him up impersonation. Jacob Laban, what does he do? He moves the ball forward. That's for sure. And if you've got Jacob Laban and Ali Leotawa defending next to each other, they're probably going to wrap some blokes up. So the energy that I saw from Mai'u, it is the same energy that all these New Zealand Warriors youngsters play with, and that is why I'm so high and such a believer in the youngsters that the New Zealand Warriors have. I am fairly confident that I believe they are one of the best crops of youngsters in the NRL. And let's expand that because, Leka Halasima played a fairly big shift in the middle. And that is important because last year for New South Wales Cup, he was playing a bit of edge, bit of middle, and if there was an injury at centre, he'd go out to centre. Leka Halasima barely broke a sweat playing in the middle against the Tigers. And that's just because he just makes footy look easy. He's not overly beefy, he's not overly tall, but he is a monster. And he is, as I think Monty Beetham said in the commentary, he's 18 years old, he's still SG Ball eligible. And again, I don't like to compare teams in the trial because much like how teams use their SG Ball teams, their Jersey Flegg teams, every team is running a different operation for the trial. So some teams are going to have all their juniors playing. Some teams are going to have all their starters playing. Like, it's a mess to compare and contrast. The Tigers had some SG Ball lads who had just played SG Ball, like, to start the season. And that's their development plan. That's fine. Leka Halasima is too good for SG Ball. He played a few SG Ball games last year, and he was quickly shuffled into New South Wales Cup while he was 17 years old. Then he comes out in the first trial game, he's 18 years old, and he's just cruising around in the middle. Every run, oomph. And that's the key word I wrote in the news that in the youngster report on our website is oomph. Because when Ali Leotawa runs the ball, it's oomph. When Jacob Laban runs the ball, it's with oomph. Leka Halasima, he is oomph. Everything he does has oomph. And I loved what Leka Halasima was doing in the middle. Tanner Smith comes on. He looks a bit smaller. He's got the red headgear. He's playing in front of the Christchurch crowd. He's fizzed up. He's a bit smaller, but he runs with vigor into the defensive line. And we just go on and on. Patrick Moimoi comes on, and this is a dangerous little anecdote because Patrick Moimoi, I didn't see a whole lot of rugby league, like junior rugby league footy in his background. To best of my knowledge, he primarily played rugby union. I think he played for Manukau Rovers at some stage. I think he played first 15 for De La Salle College. He reminds me of Conrad Hurrell and Ngani Laumape. Now, neither of them really kicked on in league after moving from rugby union to rugby league, so I don't want to shout that from the rooftops. But Patrick Moimoi is ridiculously powerful, and he is robust, and he also went from SG Ball to New South Wales Cup last year. So he might be 19 years old. And you keep going, suddenly Moala Graham Talfa, he comes on in the game, and he's bursting through tackles. He's tall, he's lean, and he is quick. And if it's not Moala Graham Talfa, well, then you've got Setu too, who I think there's two types of rugby league wingers. There is the Moala Graham Talfa type, which is he's an athlete. You can see it. He's tall, he's fast, he's strong. Then there's the Setu 2 type of winger, who's just a natural. He's a natural winger, in the same sense that Jordan Rapana is a natural winger. Ronaldo Mulatalo's cut from this cloth as well, where it's instincts, it's freaky plays, it's finishing, it's chip and chase, it's contorting your body. So I think Dylan Watanate-Zalesniak, he's more of the athlete. And then you've got the others who are more instincts and just freaky. And that's Setu too. Like, he's just always in the right place. He always finishes. He's got the razzle dazzle in him. So you got a couple of outside backs there. But as I said, all of this got real funky in the last 10 minutes. First and foremost, the Warriors won these 60 minutes that they were down to 12 players. So again, both teams went towards the youngsters. So I'm not comparing and contrasting. This isn't to say the Tigers sucked because they lost that 60 minutes stint. Who cares? None of that matters. I'm saying for the Warriors, how these young players responded. They scored 2 tries. The West Tigers scored 1 try while Zion Mai'u was off the field, while the Warriors were battling that red card adversity. But all of that happened while all the young players were on the field for the Warriors. And there were a couple of late moves that really impressed me. So we got a small, brief sighting of Luke Hansen on the field. For those who don't know, Luke Hansen, he played SG Ball and Jersey Flegg for the Penrith Panthers last year as a playmaker. Ben Farr also got lots of game time in this trial, and he is someone who's, some might view him as being on the fringe of the NRL squad. He's like half as good as Luke Hansen. So Luke Hansen got less minutes. He made a couple of good tackles. He had a big kick, and he is far more likely to play NRL football over the next 2 seasons than Ben Farr. So don't worry about Ben Farr. Whatever you thought about Ben Farr in this trial, who cares? He's not the halves prospect to watch out for. It is Luke Hansen, straight out of the Panthers setup. There was also Ituati Fukafuka. Now, Ituati Fukafuka, he was a halfback in rugby union at St. Peter's College in First 15, joins the Warriors where he plays hooker for SG Ball last year. Now again, peep the trend here. Halasima, Moi Moi, Eri Iramia Toiava, who I think primarily played edge forward in the trial. He's a massive unit as well. All these dudes who played SG Ball, they also played New South Wales Cup last year. It wasn't under 19s, under 21s. It was under 19s New South Wales Cup. But Fukafuka was playing hooker for SG Ball, and in the trial, he played as a middle forward with Paul Roach playing at hooker. And I like Paul Roach. Paul Roach is quick. He's got a bit of a craft to him. I think a way I was thinking about it is that Paul Roach is more similar to Wade Egan, as he's like just a crafty, pure dummy half. And Freddie Lussick is more similar to Fukafuka in the sense that they are rugged hookers. But Fukafuka, well, he's got a first 15 kicking background. So he's got all the kicking skills, whether it's kicking goals, kicking long, kicking short. He's a really good kicker. He's a really good passer. But against the Tigers, he was smashing dudes. So I think the best comparison, the best forecast for Fukafuka is Saliva Havili, and a very dynamic hooker who can also play middle forward. And that's how Fukafuka always say it. This is how you'll get your opportunities. You're not going to get your opportunities in your specialist position. You're going to get your opportunities in the versatility you offer. And I think Keilani Going is being developed as a small forward. Fukafuka is next in line in that small forward position who can also play hooker. And I was really impressed with Fukafuka, just his physicality, his oomph. Like, all these Warriors dudes have oomph. They all are aggressive. Zion Mai'u redlined that aggression. But when I was watching New South Wales Cup last year, that aggression saw him dominate fringe NRL forward packs while he was SG Ball eligible himself. And I just found that last 10 to 15 minutes of the game the most interesting, because this young group of Warriors were trying to win the game while down to 12 players, and they got close. Like, they only lost by a conversion. I also saw Quinlan Tupou. I don't expect anyone to know who Quinlan Tupou is. But if you follow the niche case, you will know, because I was writing about him in the preview to this game, because I was amazed that he was in the squad, considering I had never really heard of him before. But then you dive into it, and he was with the Warriors in the junior ranks, and then he went down, followed more of a rugby union pathway. He was playing Premier Rugby in Auckland last year. Now he's in the Warriors kind of fringe NRL squad, and his first run, he got like 10 meters. I couldn't suss out exactly what position he was playing. It might have been a bit of left centre. It might have been, edge forward, although Iramia Tuiava was there. It was a bit tricky to suss that out. But I was like, oh, Quinlan Tupou's on the field. Oh my God, he's running the footy. He's carrying blokes with him. And he is like the least known of these young Warriors players who are playing in that trial. So to me, watching that trial and how the trial played out, from the red card, everything else, it only filled me with more confidence that these young Warriors are really good. I think Leotawa has the most upside for the most NRL minutes this season, because I really do think he can play wing. He can play a lot of positions. Laban seems like more of a straight-up edge forward, so he needs to wait for an opportunity behind Kurt Capewell, Jackson, Ford, Niokore. But like 10 minutes off the bench, Halasima can do that. Stella Smith can do that. Maiu can do that. Iramia Toiava can do it. But that's all they're building towards this season, because Tom Ale, Bunty Afoa, they started as the props against Tigers. During the NRL season, they're going to play 20 minutes. That's it. If the stars align, they might play 25 minutes. If a greater opportunity presents itself, injury, suspension, concussion, whatever, they might play 30, 35 minutes. But these roles aren't very big. So when I'm talking about the young forwards, I'm literally talking about impact off the bench. Go crazy for 10 minutes. Don't get red carded. Just bring the ruckus. But someone like Ali Leotawa, he has scope for the biggest role out of these young players. And I would expect, given what I saw against the Tigers, Luke Hansen, I think he's still Jersey Flag eligible. But I would expect him to be playing a lot of New South Wales Cup in the halves this season. And that is especially interesting considering Sean Johnson, Tamaita Martin, Luke Metcalf, Chanel Harris-Tavita, maybe even Ben Farr. They are 5 halves competing for 4 spots across the 2 squads. But what's if Luke Hansen's playing for New South Wales Cup? And I think it's possible that Luke Hansen is going to make a significant impression with the Warriors this season in New South Wales Cup as a young half. And yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in on thinking that the Warriors, let's say top 5. I think that's a safe zone right now. Top 5 youngsters, just a crop of youngsters coming into the NRL. I think the Warriors are top 5 for sure. And let me chill out. Let me take a breath, chill out. Top 5 crop of youngsters in the NRL.
And we're expecting, from this sort of Warriors crop of youngsters, we're expecting something similar to the Phoenix here, right? Where like the Wellington Phoenix blokes in particular, because, I did just write about these academies, and the women's academy is definitely getting towards some things, but it just hasn't had as long to sort of, I don't know, gestate or whatever. The men's academy has been functioning pretty well for several years, and they're at the point now where it's like, if somewhat like there's a set sort of well, with them it's really only like a set starting 11, and then beyond that you start to dip into the academy guys. But definitely, like on the weekend we saw it, Tim Payne's out, Oscar Van Hatten will slide back and do a job there, and then Matt Sheridan will come on for his second appearance ever to cover the last half an hour. Or, Alex Roof is ruled out late. Well, Finn Conchi is going to step up. Like, we're expecting something like that from the Warriors, are we? Where it's sort of they have a set team. Like, they've got a 17, probably a couple more than that, which is solid, consistent, building off of what they achieved last year. But during the course of the season, when there are injuries, when there are sort of things, is that like we're going to start seeing, we're going to see them trusting these types of players that we saw in this trial game stepping up, is it? Or I don't think they got any sort of battlers hanging on the fringes of the things that I can think of. Like, I'm imagining that's what we're building towards, at least, isn't it? Is something like what the Phoenix are doing, where it's you have your set, like you have your top team. But when someone from there is unavailable, you just dip into the youngsters coming through rather than necessarily the having like a crop of experienced battlers or whatever, like the Phoenix in particular have been very prominent of doing in the past, in previous eras.
I think it's pretty, as always, it's extremely similar. That's the major theme of the niche case, is the comparison between the Warriors and the Phoenix. You did kind of salvage what you're saying there, because you said like trusting the youngsters, but then you went more in the direction of opportunities present themselves during the season, and that's the key thing. It's not like, I just think a lot of the top 17 players are better, and they are better now,
and of course they are. Yeah.
So, but so the opportunities will present themselves, and that's where it's like, as we're seeing with the Phoenix, what do the young players do? Chiefy gets them playing 5 minutes at the end of this game, 10 minutes at the end of the next game, and then suddenly they're playing 45 minutes because someone got injured, then they're starting another game. That's what will happen during the season. So if you're worried about the depth, don't worry. Because, so Halasima, I think he's one of the best prospects across the whole NRL. He won't play more than 20 minutes if he makes his debut this year. That's it. You don't need him any more than that. And Andrew Webster, of all people, is going to know how to manage these players and develop them over the course of the season. But you might not see any of these dudes this season, because the top 17 might just stay solid. And again, I mentioned, there's 4 halves right there. Sean Johnson, Tamari Martin, Luke Metcalf, Chanel Harris, Tavita. 4 halves. There's no space for another half, right there, even though I'm talking up Luke Hanson. Okay, Jacob Laban, he's awesome. Well, he's not starting ahead of Kurt Capewell. I doubt he's starting ahead of Jackson Ford. And you're not going to give him a bench spot, because on your bench, you're going to have Bunty Afoa, Tom Alley, Jazz Tavanga, Dylan Walker. Maybe another hooker, Freddie Lussick, because Wade Egan always gets injured. But then if we're signing Kurt Capewell to move Niokore to the middle, then we're going to start with Jackson Ford and Kurt Capewell on the edges, and Niakore's on the bench. So suddenly the bench is Dylan Walker, Niokore, Bunty Afoa, Tom Alley. There's no space for any youngsters in the top 17. There might be space for Leotawa. There might be space for Laban. There might be a bit of space for Demetric Sifakula, who I haven't mentioned yet because he's out injured, and he made his NRL debut last year, can play middle, can play edge. They might get a bit of game time, but they, as is the case with the Phoenix, they are really good. The youngsters are really good, and so if you're Costa Barbarouses, you're thinking, damn, I got to be good, because these young dudes are pretty good. If I'm Neil Wagner, I'm like, whoa, crikey, Jack, Will O'Rourke looks pretty good. I might need to take some wickets. That is what is happening with the Warriors. And if you've got an emotional attachment to Bunty Afoa, Jazz Tavanga, Tom Alley, you might need to do some mindfulness and work through that emotional attachment, because, any number of these youngsters might be more impactful than those dudes this season in their opportunities. I'm not saying they are better right now. I'm saying that is the competition for spots in the squad, because Bunty Afoa is training every day with Leka Halasima. And he knows Leka Halasima is 18 years old. He's just as powerful as Bunty Afoa. He's more versatile than Bunty Afoa. So if it comes down to a bench spot and you're thinking, how do we build our bench? Late in the season, couple of injuries, well, Tom Ale or Bunty Afoa, they can only play prop. Where Leka Halasima can play middle, but he can also cover edge. Like, that's how you build your bench positions. I think that is a bit different to football, where that versatility really matters, because your bench in football is like 10 players, and then you can use 5 subs if it's still that rule. I'm not sure if it's the COVID rule or what. But in NRL, you've only got 4 bench players, and you've got greater chances of concussion, injury, suspension, sent off, red card, yellow card, whatever. So you need to have that versatility on your bench, and that's why I'm high on Leotawa for minutes this season. I like Laban, and he fits the mold of the, like, continuing the comparison to the Phoenix. The Phoenix have a very clear playing style, and you need to fit into that playing style to get your opportunities. Laban is the ideal prototype for the edge forwards that Andrew Webster wants. Because, you know, half of his runs are going to be coming back into the middle of the field. But then there's also subtle nuance in how they run those lines where you angle back into the middle, but as you get the ball, you kind of skew back out towards the sideline. So you're not running straight lines. You might just go back in, and then the fourth time you get the ball, you fake to go back in, you go out. That requires athleticism. It requires speed and agility. That's what Laban has. I think that's why Jackson Ford, he's not fast, he's not agile, but he understands the concepts. And I think that's why Kirk Cape was going to be useful. And Laban just fits the mold there. I've kind of talked myself silly at this point. But I do have some big boppers I want to highlight. So over the summer, I wrote about the Kiwi-NRL young big boppers to watch out for. Over this weekend, we had 4 from that yarn on our website, thenews-case.com, playing NRL trials. Kaius Fa'atili, Hornby Jr. from Christchurch, he was playing for the Storm. Salisi Ata Otahuhu Jr. from Auckland, he was playing against Sebastian Sua for the Knights. Mount Albert Jr., I believe, or Mount Albert Senior, because I don't know if he was playing junior footy. So the Knights had Sua, Sharks had Ata, they were going at each other. The Cowboys had the Jazire Pua'avase, who was a Manurewa Jr. He was in the Cowboys. So those dudes were all playing trials footy. And then there's also Xavier Willison. And we've seen Xavier Willison look pretty damn impressive in a Broncos trial game. He was also pretty damn impressive for the Aotearoa Māori over the weekend. He is a Waikoa Bay Jr. And if we think about how the Aotearoa Kiwis performed end of last year, who were some of the impactful players for them? Leo Thompson, Griffin Neame. Like, there's no shortage of big boppers from Aotearoa. Absolutely not. Because all those dudes are joined by the Warriors Juniors. Now, of course, they're eligible for a wide variety of nations, but specifically under the Kiwi-NRL umbrella, there are no shortage of big boppers. 4 of them were on show in the NRL trials. Xavier Willison is making waves with the Broncos. I'm really excited to see him play footy this year. Leo Thompson building with the Knights. Griffin Neame building with the Cowboys. There's a lot of these really good big boppers. They're massive. They're mobile. You know, Kaius Fa'atili's younger brother, Felix Fa'atili, he's in the Sharks system. Like, these dudes are everywhere. Javan Stevenson-Hulla, he's with the Eels. He's fantastic. Elijah Rasmussen with the Dolphins. They're all pretty damn impressive. We might even see Isaac Matalavea Booth with the Bulldogs at some point. He's been off the radar for a while, but we might see him this season with the Bulldogs, Jersey Flag or New South Wales Cup. Once again, there is no issues and it is the most productive area of Kiwi NRL recruitment. It's the big boppers. And those big boppers, they're only going to help Aotearoa Kiwis, and they're going to flow into Samoa, Tonga, Cook Islands as well. And there's a lot of them, because the dudes I wrote about in my Big Bopper yarn, there's dudes below them. And there's new dudes every year, and they're coming strong.
Right on. I guess we slide along. What else do we have on the list?
There's no big boppers in the Dragon system, though, from our team.
There are...
Vitala Mariner, but he's injured.
Vitala Mariner is a good signing, though. I like that one.
You do?
Even though it came about weird circumstances, like all of them. Yeah.
The signing of a dude who was the captain of the Bulldogs, and then the Bulldogs didn't want him. That really excites you?
Yeah. Right, he's not injured, so that's normally the prerequisite for the Dragons, so I'm happy with that.